stretch your arm a little bit.
I've been droning on too long. You can just wave your arms in front of me. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just since the interval, two extremely powerful speeches. Really, the emotion that we have in this room is testimony to how strongly we feel about this. And it's nice, I think, sometimes to know that we're not going slightly mad, perhaps, when the issue of Brexit is being discussed. You look around you go shopping, you go on the tube, and people are carrying around their normal business as if nothing's happening, and you think, my goodness, am I the only one who can see how bad this is? But you know, the issues are real, and we do feel them very much. My name is Seb Dance, and I have the absolute privilege and huge honour of being a member of the European Parliament for London, which I have been since 2014. And there are 8 of us in total representing London. Well, 7 of us represent London. No, it's actually 6 of us represent London. 2 support Brexit. But we won't talk anything about that. And one of the things that we do in the European Parliament as a group of British MEPs is we do work cross-party to fight this issue, because whatever the differences we all have in our respective political parties, and in many cases those differences are quite big when it comes to some of the issues that we fight on a daily basis, particularly at a local level. When it comes to this issue, there is nothing more important than making sure that we have a future as a country that isn't divided by nationalism, that isn't ruled by this ideology of hate, and that the next generation, the kids playing outside, where are they? They're fine, good, okay, they haven't disappeared. They are the people that we're fighting for as well, because of course this isn't just about taking away our rights and reducing our chances and opportunities. It is fundamentally about putting the next generation at a huge disadvantage just on free movement alone. If we deny the next generation of UK resident children and students the opportunity to live, study, travel, work, retire, fall in love with, all of the things that you can do under free movement, then we are essentially putting them at an enormous disadvantage compared to everyone else in the family of nations in the European Union. And that in itself should be enough to get us angry. That in itself should be enough. But of course there are so many other aspects of leaving the European Union that will affect our daily lives, right through from the big issues such as the air that we breathe, the quality of the produce that we consume, through to things like ensuring that our mobile phone bills are low when we go on holiday, and all the other kind of consumer issues that affect us on an individual basis. And that's why it's so important that we do this, that we get together, that we talk cross-party, and that we talk about the reasons why we are so passionately European. I've got a little backstory as well of my own. My grandmother was born in a little town called, at that point, it was called Marienburg, which is now in Poland, Malbork. And she was born under the Kaiser in the German Empire. And she's dead now, unfortunately. But by the time she was a little girl, the empire had gone, and it was replaced by the Weimar Republic, which was obviously a democracy that then didn't last very long. It was replaced by the Third Reich, and she lived under the Third Reich, and she worked in fact she worked as a secretary in the German embassy in Moscow at the time in which Hitler invaded, and she was taken prisoner and exchanged in neutral Sweden with the Soviet embassy staff. They did an exchange of staff. And then she found herself marrying the British officer who was in charge of the displaced persons camp in Italy. There's lots of details in between there. But then, you know, when she came back to the UK, it wasn't until she was 75 that the area that she was born in became a democracy, because it had lived under a communist dictatorship up until that point. And it wasn't until the year before her death, when she was 91, that there was free movement between the place that she ended up living in Buckinghamshire, and the place of her birth. That's an entire lifetime where the rights and the privileges that we now take for granted and are fighting so hard to keep were just not there. It's an entire lifetime. She never ever knew what it was like to live in a Europe that was united, where we didn't solve our differences by going to the battlefield, but where we did it in rather boring and dry trilogues that I take part in between the Commission, the Council and the Parliament, where we vote on things, where we discuss together on issues of commonality that affect each and every one of the 500 million citizens that live in the European Union. That's the beauty of it. That's the sheer joy. And I love being an MEP. I'm not going to pretend that I don't love my job. I do love my job because you get to be in an environment where 28 different cultures and political cultures get together and we talk about the issues that affect us all. Of course, so much is done at a national level, so much is done at a local level, so much should be done at a national and local level, by the way. There is no contradiction between having strong powers for local government, strong regional government, strong national governments, and being part of the European Union. There is no contradiction at all. And all of you will work in various different sectors and industries, but I bet you will share this same observation, that there are so many local ideas, so many projects, from things that are to do with cleaning up local streets, making sure that the air quality in local areas is improved, neighbourhood watch programmes, programmes to look after the elderly, all of these schemes that can happen at a national level. Wouldn't it be fantastic if the cities of Europe could work together, if there were networks that enable Berlin and Barcelona to share best practice, Manchester and Malta, Liverpool and Ljubljana? These are the networks that the European Union can provide. There is no gap, there is no contradiction between having a strong relationship with your local authority and being in the European Union. And that's, of course, the fundamental myth that we have to grapple with. The idea that the European Union is about quashing any kind of democracy or localism or the ability to be who we are. I think multiple identities is a huge part of getting that message across. Because, like many of you here, I am very, very proud of my multiple identities. I'm a Londoner, I'm a European, I'm a Brit, I'm English, I'm part German, and I'm Irish. You know, I'm all of these things, and I'm extremely proud of those. And I don't think they contradict at all. I don't think they clash. I don't think they cancel each other out. And this idea that you're either one thing or the other, a citizen of nowhere or a citizen of Britain, and everything else isn't worth talking about, is complete and utter nonsense. And that's why we're here, to make sure that we can make that case for a better and more complicated, but ultimately more beautiful world. That's what the European Union represents to me. So where do we go from here? I see this Brexitometer, but when was this done? Was this?
This was January.
This is Penge.
This is Penge, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
I saw a similar one today in Crystal Palace where I am, and it was very similar. People were going for the extend Article 50 and remain in the EU.
Yeah.
There's a nice picture. Yeah.
Well, it's really encouraging, and you see a lot of these on social media from around the country, even in places that voted to leave, in some cases voted heavily to leave. People are responding to this, and I think
it's a fantastic tool.
Absolutely. And I think there is a general sense that we cannot simply go on like this. We cannot continue to have a discussion that is ignoring the facts, ignoring the fact that people have begun now to change their minds and to think critically about where we are going on this. Now, this is what I want to say to you today, because we have a few days now until Tuesday. Tuesday is the crunch day. Tuesday is the day at which this wretched, horrible deal, the deal that of course crystallises Brexit into 585 pages. For the first time we now know what Brexit is, and guess what? Everybody hates it, because it doesn't deliver what we want, obviously, staying in the European Union, and it doesn't deliver what the Leavers want, because it doesn't give us the free trade deals that they so crave, it doesn't give us the additional investment in public services that some people wanted, it doesn't give us the freedom from regulation that other people wanted, because of course all of those things were contradictory. Now it's written in paper, 585 pages, everybody hates it. But the Prime Minister is determined. She's absolutely determined. I read two different things on the way from Forest Hill station to here. One of them was that the Prime Minister is promising peerages and knighthoods and all of the other wonderful gongs in our constitutional Christmas box that she can hand out in order to persuade MPs to vote for the deal. The other thing I read, also from the same said constitutional Christmas box, was that the Queen might be called on to block any move that Parliament has to extend Article 50 or indeed change the nature of Brexit and make it much more of a softer Brexit. I mean, this is nonsense. This is complete nonsense. And we shouldn't ignore that this is tearing at the very fabric of our democracy. It's not the idea that you don't respect the vote and we ignore what happened on the 23rd of June 2016 and that's what this is all about. That is not what we're doing. We're not the ones disrespecting that vote at all. Because frankly, if that 585-page document said we will have loads of trade deals, we will keep what we have now, but we'll be able to build on it. We'll be able to trade with the rest of the world. We'll have £350 million a week for the NHS. Then we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. We'd have to say, okay, fine, you won, and you're right. It is brilliant. I've got nothing more to say about the matter. But we're not, because we know that's not the case. We're not the ones disrespecting that vote. It's them. They are disrespecting that vote. The government is disrespecting that vote by presenting it as a choice between no deal, which was not voted for, or her deal, which was not voted for. So we can't fall into her trap. So we only have a few days now to persuade MPs that they have to vote down this deal. They have to vote down under all circumstances. They cannot allow this deal to go through. If it goes through, two things will happen. Firstly, our campaign, I'm afraid, will have to migrate from stopping Brexit to rejoining at some point, and that is going to be a very hard psychological bridge for us all to go down. We will have, I'm afraid, virtually no chance of stopping Brexit if that deal gets passed on Tuesday. The other thing, of course, that will happen is that we will end up talking about Brexit for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, let's face it, 10 years, because we will never, ever get to a settled stage, because that new trade deal, that new settled future relationship will never be arrived at, because we will never get the wonderful, fantastic, contradictory things that the blank sheet of paper that was Leave in 2016 promised. And that's because we have never confronted the fundamental contradictions at the heart of what the Leave campaign was. And it's why it's so important to fight for this people's vote, because for the first time, this isn't about revisiting the question in 2016, for the first time, people know what Leave is. They have a Leave option. The Leave option is May's deal. That is what it looks like. It could be the case that Parliament takes a bit longer, that we get that extension that we need, under most circumstances, to be honest, and Parliament says, actually, what we want is a softer Brexit. You might have heard discussions that were going on between a group of MPs, cross-party, and the leader of the opposition, looking at some kind of Norway customs union plus approach. Now, it would be better. It would be better. We would keep free movement. We would retain many of the benefits that we have as members of the European Union, the kind of small things that we take for granted, the fact that you don't have to fill out a form to drive your car in another European country, free healthcare in other European countries, the roaming charges, all the rest of it. We would keep that, okay, great, but we would lose all of our input into the formal structures of the European Union. We would become a rule taker. We would have no say in the Council, no say in the Parliament, and it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. From a democratic point of view, and of course it is not what was voted for in 2016, and that's why this campaign is so important. People's vote, public vote, final say, whatever you want to call it, and different people think there are different connotations to each name. I don't care what it's called, frankly. The next referendum on Europe is essential, because none of those options that I've outlined, May's deal, or indeed another compromise on the customs union and Norway or whatever, neither of those things could last more than 6 or 9 months. If they're forged in this current crisis, they will fall apart. That consensus will fall apart way before we get to the end of the transition, because as soon as you have a directive on lawnmowers or light bulbs or flower settings or whatever it is, you will have a big tabloid campaign saying, this is an outrage, we voted out, tear it up, and I bet you now the reaction in Parliament will be to try and compete with each other to see who can get the most populist on that and tear up that agreement. That's why it's essential this goes to a public vote. It's not just a question of, we didn't like the result in 2016, therefore we want another vote. It is essential, because if this is not signed off, because it's so demonstrably different from what was promised in 2016, it will spell disaster if we don't get this signed off. And we all believe passionately in the coherence of our communities, in the maintenance of the rule of law, in establishing, frankly, a modicum of democratic civil society and not seeing that fall apart. If we go into a set of relationships where the consensus for it breaks down, where people feel like they've been cheated, where there is no honesty in the public debate coming from major sources in the government or indeed in the opposition, then we end up in a situation that is very, very dark indeed, because that betrayal narrative is sitting out there, and the right wing have written that betrayal narrative for every single outcome. And one of the arguments I sometimes hear against having another referendum is the idea that that will simply lead to a betrayal argument. And we have to be ready for this, and we have to accept it, and we have to fight it, because there's a betrayal narrative for every single outcome. With May's deal, it's obvious. The betrayal narrative is, well, this isn't the Brexit that we wanted. This is because Ollie Robbins and the government are Ramonas, and they don't have the best interests of Brexit at heart, blah, blah, blah. That's already been written, it's already out there, it's already in some newspaper leads. With our campaign for another referendum, that is obviously a betrayal narrative from their perspective, because it's disrespecting 2016. And even with a no deal, there's a betrayal narrative, because they will say, well, the reason that the economy's tanked, the reason that we're in this chaos is because we didn't kick out all of the people that we said we should kick out. And actually, that's again because the government is run by Ramonas. That betrayal narrative is there, and we can't run away from it. We can't be frightened of it. And my message to everyone in every political party is this: if you can't confront the betrayal narrative and take it on, we've no business being in politics whatsoever. We may as well pack up and go home and let them run the country, because that's what will happen if we turn our back from this fight. So let's be energized about this. Let's recognize the danger, but also the huge positivity that we felt in this room about why we're so passionately European, why we believe in multiple identities, why this is the progression from a simple nation-state structure that has benefits, but ultimately in the 21st century has run its course to something much, much newer, much, much more fabulous, and much, much more responsive as well to the everyday needs that you and I have in this society. So let's do this, let's win this. But Tuesday is crucial. We have to defeat that deal. So get on to everyone you know, every single member of parliament you have any contact with of all stripes, get them to vote this deal down, and then we can talk sensibly about getting that vote. Thank you very much.
Thanks,